Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Above the Bar podcast, where each week we belly up to the bar with a new guest, find out what they do, who they are, and what makes them great. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. Alrighty, folks, welcome back to the Above the Bar podcast. It's your host, Sean. We have bellied up to the bar. This is going to be the last show of the year, folks, and we're doing it right. In a grumbly, not smoky at all basement bar. Every so often, you just need a little bit of life, a little bit of color, and nothing brightens up the room better than a rose. So, joining us from right here in Smallbany, New York, it is Miss Rose Miller.
Hi, Sean. Thank you for having me.
Do you like that one? I told you I have no idea how I'm going to do these intros. But Rose is joining us, folks. We're going to be talking about what the purpose of HR is, some of her HR stories, her experiences. She's got a book out there. But before we get too far into all those things, let's knock out some house cleaning as always. Here over my right shoulder, it's the big board for Sticker and a Cause. Maybe you've got your own book, you've got a podcast, you've got a band. I don't care what it is. If you've got a sticker and you want to get some free advertisement, reach out to me on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, X now, I think it's called. And our website is the Above the Bar Podcast.com. Our email is above the bar podcast at gmail.com. Any and all places. Heck, if you can put up smoke signals and I can read them, I'd probably figure it out from that. And I'll send you out a sticker, or you send me out a sticker. I'll tell you where we put it up on the board and we read all about you and we all get each other's word out. That's Sticker and a Cause. We got to talk about our sponsors, though. Rose is familiar with our sponsors. That's Budget Blinds of East Greenbush, Budget Blinds of Hudson and Cooksaki, and Budget Blinds of Schoharie. They are North America's #1 custom window treatment company. That's right, folks. These are custom window treatments. And this is everything from shutters, shades, blinds, Roman shades. They carry everything from Hunter Douglas, Norman, Custom Brands Group, any of the big boys that are out there. They've got them. And they're going to come right to your house. They're going to measure at no cost. They're going to tell you what it's going to take to get your window treatments taken care of. They're going to install them for you. They are your single point of success for your window treatments, meaning you don't have to worry about, well, call, this guy up and he'll measure, go into the store and hopefully they can get you something. I was just speaking with their reps recently, and I'm not going to say what the name of the big box store is, but a customer ordered their shades and they were told they were going to be in June. Their sales rep went and saw these people a week ago and said that they still didn't have their shades. And that the big box store was telling them it probably wouldn't be till spring. You're not going to worry about that with Budget Blinds because there's 1,500 of them across the country. They have a little bit of buying power, folks. So reach out to either Budget Blinds of East Greenbush, Hudson, Cooksaki, and Schoharie. This month in January or in December, their sale is 25% off of all motorization. But in January for the new year, it's going to be 20% off of your entire order. 5% off of motorization. And as always, folks, if you tell them you're there to belly up to the bar, they're going to give you 5% off of whatever the discount is, just for letting them know you heard them here on the show. So make sure you let them know you're there to belly up to the bar. That's Budget Blinds of East Greenbush, Hudson, Cooksaki, and Budget Blinds of Schoharie. All right, Rose, it's all done. All the heavy lifting is over with.
Hey, we love our sponsors, right?
Somebody's got to pay the bills around here. It's got to happen. So, how are you today, Miss Rose?
I'm doing great. Having a good day. Finished a lot of work today. So always the year end is busy time for HR people. A lot of things needed for the new year.
Now I'm gonna make sure I got my notes right because there's a lot of extra initials that HR people like to have, but you're a SPHR, correct?
Yep, that stands for Senior Professional in HR. And there's it's a certification institute in Princeton, New Jersey that issues that.
Now that's an interesting thing, and I want to get into that when it comes to HR. That I think personally is a very important part of HR and makes HR very unique in what it is. And you might correct me on some things here in my way of thinking about this. Hint, hint. I don't know if I've ever told you this. I have a bachelor's in human resource management. I don't know if I ever told. Did I ever tell you
That,
that?
that's a scary thought, Sean.
I know. And I'm the guy who like I'm always like, yeah, I have it, but I've used mine for the evils of recruiting.
Yes.
I'm not doing the other side of it.
Yeah.
Uh, but so how many years have you been involved with human resources?
Oh, more than I want to admit. More more years than I want to admit. Yeah, let's say over 30.
And so you from the womb you were doing HR.
Yes. Yes, you're kind. Yes.
As you can tell, my daddy didn't raise no fools. But so you've been doing this well over 30 years. You've been involved in a lot of different aspects of HR. And look, folks, if you want to know about Rose and what Rose has going on, you can check her website. It's scrolling on the bottom. It's sweetadvicellc.com. And that's sweet, SUITE advicellc.com. And you can see what she's got going on. So, what were some of I just kind of want to get your background so people can understand
Yeah.
where you started in the HR world. So, like, were you like a generalist? How did you get into HR?
So, I actually didn't start my career in HR. I started it in finance. But halfway in my degree, I was working at a CPA firm, and the wise managing director told me I had a little too much personality to be a CPA, and I did believe him. So because
Okay.
I could do the work well, but it was a dry bunch of people that were working with, and I did have too much personality. So I was able to switch my degree into organizational behavior. So I always had, there has been this phenomenon. Uh, it's something I don't advocate right now, where HR rolls up to finance. I'm actually on a mission to break that up because it's not where it belongs. It does not belong rolled up to finance, because finance does what I call the three C's: contain, control, and conceal. And none of those three things ever solve the real problem. Actually just keeps a problem going on and on. So I always was responsible for the people side, and I really enjoyed the people side of the business. I could get the accounting running like a well-oiled machine, but what was more dynamic, what was actually what I saw as a bigger driver to the success of an organization, was the HR piece. So I switched my degree and finished my last 2 years in organizational behavior. And I worked my way through college, which was hard, but at the same time, a real advantage that I could bring my knowledge into an organization and really have some great impact if you understood how critical it was to get the people side of the business in better shape. It's a very misunderstood kind of, when people say human resources, they say, "Oh, you mean you're in staffing?" Just like you've
Right.
used yours.
Right.
Or they'll say, it's such a large kind of umbrella of services that are under the word HR. So you could be a generalist, you could be a compliance person, that you're creating policy and procedures. You could be the recruiting arm, you could be the benefits arm, you could be the training of people. So it's a really diverse um, field that has, HR has so many elements to it. Um,
Do you think
and
that hurts or helps HR? I'm very curious. It's interesting as you're saying that, and I'm hearing, you know what? That's right. I've heard all these different elements. As a person who's been in HR for at least 2 weeks, we know you're just getting into it because you're. I'm kidding, but how does that? Because I've even seen like DEI, like, oh, we want to add DEI under HR because well, it's people, and then DEI people fight that they're tooth and
yeah,
nail because they're like, we're not HR, we're DEI. And if you don't know what that is, folks, that's diversity, equity, and inclusion. Uh, and if you go read about it, that's a whole nother thing. Because I
yeah,
always tell people I fall under DEI, and they're like, "How do you, as a 48-year-old white male fall under that because I'm a veteran, and they're like, "That's DEI."
Yes.
I'm like, "Yeah, yeah. Guess what?
Yeah,
We're
it is.
DEI too." But
Yeah.
for you, all those different elements with your experience, how do you feel? Like, do you think it benefits HR or hurts HR?
There's a it's an ongoing argument that DEI say separate or go under the HR umbrella. And there's some really good arguments on both sides. DEI people feel the same way I just described HR rolling up the finance. They say it needs its own funding, number one. See, if you roll it under HR, now you only have one budget. So you know things don't actually happen in corporate America if you don't fund it, if you don't put money behind it. So you keep make it a separate
Line
vertical,
item,
it
yeah.
all of a sudden has a line item. I really like, from my personal opinion, I like it to be partners, where one isn't reporting to the other, that they really partner, because they need HR. Is if there isn't an arm that implements some of their philosophies and changes, it goes nowhere. So you really need the combination, the partnership. But I probably lean towards them shouldn't be under HR, that they should have their own thing.
I would agree with that. And look, folks, if you're out there and you're just joining us, make sure if you have any questions for Rose, you want to know you have an HR related question. She's not going to give you legal advice. She's not going to tell you like this is what you do, but she may have a scenario where she's dealt with it in the past, which she has her book that she's going to tell us about, where she may have something in the past and she can tell you like, hey, I've dealt with these situations, these are my approaches, but she's not going to give you advice and be like, so what you do is put a banana in their tailpipe and it'll all be much better. That's not happening. You ain't getting me in trouble. You ain't getting Rose in trouble. It's not happening. But I mean, but you're more Rose, and I want to talk about all this here. You're let's see, what is it? So president of Sweet Advice, which we're going to talk about when you started that.
Right.
You're a thought leader, which I love that term. That means we have opinions on things and we know how
Right.
to tell people it without hurting their feelings. That's what thought leader means, folks.
Yep.
If you've ever wondered what that is, writer and newspaper columnist. Um, you've done, a little bit of everything. What do you think has kept you in that HR world? Because I listen, and you can tell me if I'm a liar or not, but most HR people I know outside they remind have you ever seen the movie oh gosh, I can't think of the name of the movie yet. It was a restaurant movie where the waitress would like walk out to everybody and she'd be smiling and everything. And the minute she walked behind the door, she was just cussing and spitting and mad as can be. Like I always feel like everybody I know in the HR world, that's them. They meet people and they're like, well, listen, sweetheart, I understand someone took your lunch. That is bad, but we can't start an investigation over a sandwich bag. But and then you walk away and you're like, this son
Oh,
of like how do you stay in it for as long as you have?
well, I truly believe to be good at it, because there's, like every career, there's good there's people that are good at it and there's people that are bad at it, right? But I think to be really good at it, you really enjoy people. You like people. Most I will tell you, most people, most of my clients, they wish they could have their run their companies with no people whatsoever, because if you ever see my podcast, it starts with the phrase that people are your most important assets, yet they're your biggest pain in your assets, because they are. they, they they're as colorful as the rainbow. The day you think you figured them out, you should be not doing that anymore, because you can't figure them out. But you really think that people are fascinating? Yeah, I think they're fascinating. I don't run from the scary, sticky situations. And that's what most people shy away from. Most people would like cringe at a lot of the conversations I have with people. They like, how did you do that? Why would you ever say you said that? And I don't cringe from that. I just think people are fascinating, and that's what keeps me going and keeps me at it.
So Carol down here that just said, "Have you been sitting in my office again?" So she is my other HR ninja that I reach out to when I'm like, "Hey," but it's funny you mentioned the finance thing. That's where she started was, and she'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe she started in finance, and they were like, "Hey, you want to go into HR also and take over that line?" And she's just continued the HR piece, and so you were in the look, yeah, and still doing the finance piece to it also, still at it. Um, so, and I know if I'm jumping too much because I find the HR stuff fascinating because of, like I said, I have a degree in it, but I didn't work in that side of it. Um, how long were you in the private sector companies working in that side of HR
Yeah. So
before you
yeah,
moved to private?
right. I worked in corporate America for probably 25 years. I worked in corporate America as the highest level of HR. I worked in Boston, Philadelphia, New York City, Providence, Rhode Island. When I came to Albany, which is now 30 years ago, I did take my first role had the combination. It was a .com, and they needed both sides. They needed someone to do finance and someone to do HR. But when that when the .com bubble burst,
Oh,
I I got to know the board of directors really well because we kind of had a revolving door with the CFO, and I would have to pinch hit whatever whenever there wasn't one. And that's how I met the people at First Albany Corporation, and I became their VP of HR for until I left there, and that's when I decided to start my own business and not and leave corporate America. I kind of had seen enough of corporate America to know that I didn't want to be in it anymore.
that
And
and that sweet advice is your company.
yeah, sweet advice. But when I left First Albany, I started Pinnacle Human Resources. That's when I left corporate America to start that HR consulting business because that was pure HR consulting. I kind of had this idea of how to. It was really a fortunate kind of thing to be in a small .com startup exercise in that where they have no resources, nothing, everything has to be built from scratch, to what I had before in corporate America where you have department, many locations, a lot of layers, a lot of resources, a budget. So what I came to realize is that both types of companies needed HR very badly. Just one didn't have any resources and one had plenty. So, and I didn't invent the model. I did some research, and nationwide outsourced HR, just like you could do outsourced any of the support functions have become a model for small business. You can outsource your marketing, your accounting, your HR, your IT. You don't have to own those people.
That's me.
It doesn't, right, it doesn't make any sense. You outsource when you need them, as you need them, but you need an expert, and you need it done well, and you're willing to pay for it because you don't need it all the time. You just need it on occasion. It's a great model. I did it myself. I outsourced all my other pieces. I didn't have to outsource the HR, of course, but I outsourced all the other pieces.
Yeah,
So
I love that model, and I'll tell anyone who owns a small business, I think it's one of the things that small business people get wrapped around the axle of is, well, if I start my own business, I don't know anything about bookkeeping. I don't know anything about accounting. It's going to be just me. Do I need an HR? Well, when do I need that person? And all these different elements. And I kind of just through process of knowing other small business owners, I was like, wait a sec. So I can hire a call center. I pay them X amount of dollars. They're not on my payroll. I don't care if someone's going out sick, maternity, vacation. You're always going to have somebody, right? And that's your problem. Yes. Sounds like a winner to me. I don't get
It
it. And
it is. It's
Carol just
such
said there's situations when you don't want in-house handling it, and that's true because
oh,
in-house.
so true, so true.
I mean, how many times have and that kind of rolls into your book a little bit. Your book talks
Yeah,
about some of those situations where you, through Pinnacle, were brought in. But before we get into the book, I have to ask a question because you
yeah.
were an HR VP. The one thing that drives me nuts in HR, because they are HR, is I think HR is the worst with naming. I'm an HR VP. I am a CHRO. I'm a CPO. Well, what's the difference? I deal with more of the people and the happiness of the company. You're this person deals more with like legal type stuff. Is that not the most ridiculous thing that HR has started? I want your opinion on
It's
it. I have to hear
it's
it.
true. Well, HR's full of alphabet soup. We just love our alphabet soup. All the laws are FLSA and HSAs and
Oh, it's so ridiculous.
ADA. We have enough alphabet soup to build a whole dictionary.
It's so ridiculous with them, and that's and see, I have so many things for you because I also feel like HR is one of the few jobs that you can move up now, and I would love to hear your thoughts through corporate roles, and you could become a C-suite HR person
Mm.
with a high school diploma because there are organizations that oversee it, like you have your senior professional HR, and what's the other one? Fix me. There's another
Just the PHR, just
PHR,
the
professional
PH, professional.
professional human resources. There you have these certifications. And I think that's one of the great things about HR is if you can get into it and you can eat a little bit of crow and trudge through what you have to and get those certifications, they're based on your knowledge, your ability, your skill set, not just look, I can read a book and sit in a room for 4 years. I mean, how do you feel about that HR still has that purity to it?
I do. It really has evolved though, Sean. I mean, HR has really evolved, especially in the last 20 years. Um, it was always known as in the past when it was called personnel as
Yes.
the paper pusher or the party maker or worse, the hood and sickle people. You know, the ones that oh only
Uh-oh, road to
disciplined and
fluency.
terminated, right? Um, but never like the good parts, the parts that motivate people and make better employers and help people do their best. That's the evolution. What really moved the needle was COVID because HR people stepped up. They were the ones taking care of everyone. They were keeping up on what was making them sick, um, making sure that they had their benefits, making sure, I mean, death was everywhere. And
Oh,
having to notify families and do all their death benefits. I mean, it was it was an unbelievable time for HR. And they totally stepped up. And people became noticed that like, oh, I guess they do something important after all.
you mean they're not just setting up the Christmas party? Huh,
Exactly.
man, I didn't realize that. So here you are, you're moving from, this large corporate guaranteed money world to all of a sudden, you're gonna be like flipping the coin, and
Oh,
I'm gonna go do it on my own, and I'm gonna offer my services to everyone else. I'm gonna ask and I ask this of all entrepreneurs as an entrepreneur myself. I this was probably one of the hardest conversations I had going from a nice, comfortable job to, hey, babe, I'm gonna go ahead and hustle every day. What was that conversation with your significant other like when you were like, hey, so this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna piss this VP away, and I'm going to be me.
I'm so glad you asked that because if you don't have a partner that is wonderful like mine that just totally backed me up, it couldn't have happened because I needed to go to a bank and I needed to put up the house as collateral,
Isn't that
and
scary?
he had to agree to doing that, and he did. And I really am very blessed because he believed it that I could do this. He believed I could make it happen. I do have a little advantage. He is an amazing salesperson. So
Ah,
I had an instructor every day telling me how to do this, because one thing that was not on my resume was sales. Was not on my resume, and I did not know how to do that. And he really coached me and taught me how to be in front of the customer, how to listen more than talk, not to give things away. I mean, our good friend Denise will tell you that you can you can have a brilliant product and service, but if you don't know how to sell it to the customer, no one will know you are alive or what you do. So having very fortunate to have him as an instructor. He had my back, let me put the house up for sale.
is that not the scariest thing when you have to say to your significant other, like, I have this idea, we can do it. And they're like, well, how much is it going to cost us? The house. What? Yeah, I need to go ahead and take the equity out of our home and we can do this. It's the
Yeah.
scariest conversation I know I've ever had.
But I also had a really cool and fateful meeting with a CPA group. I was doing my business plan because anyone that wants to start a business should start with a business plan. That's number one. So I had my business plan all was mapping out, and I had my marketing piece was I was trying to finish. Where so I went to a chamber event where you go around to people and ask, a bunch of questions. Have you ever heard of this service? Would you ever use any of this service? It's the marketing piece of their business plan. So I sat with what was then Dorf and Robbie, and I didn't know I was sitting with the managing partner. And they sponsored the chamber luncheon. It was a luncheon. And I said to this guy, I said, it's really cool what you have going on there. You have the CPA core, and you've got these ancillary businesses that are servicing the clients. I said, but it seems like you're missing one. It's like, do you have, and one of my questions was, do you have clients asking about HR problems and HR issues? He says, oh my God, I can't believe you're asking me this, because we're getting inundated with these questions, and we're CPAs, we're not HR experts, and we don't know. And I said, well, you ever consider starting a HR subsidiary? He said, we just had a meeting on this, and we said we're going to have to look for a person to lead that subsidiary. And I said, I think you just met that person. So he invited me the following week into the office, and I gave him my spiel and what I was planning on building. And he said, you can build it here. And they had no HR. So for the fee that I charged them to do HR for the firm, it went against it was the revenue to start that subsidiary of. So I was able to start it with very little capital. But 4 years later, some of the CPA rules became more complex, and it got in the way of the subsidiary, and they were also courted to merge with a larger firm. So
Oh,
that's when I had to go to the bank and buy the partners out, the CPAs out. But many things fatefully happened, and I was giving. I had a lot of banker friends that were affiliated with the CPA group, and I gave free HR advice to a lot of the bankers that would have HR issues with their folks. So I had really great relationships with them. So when I needed capital, um, they to buy the CPAs out, they
they
one
were
just
like,
said,
hey, look, we know she knows her stuff. We've got this covered. Hey,
yeah,
look, folks, if you're just joining us and you want to know about Rose and you want to know what Rose has got going on, check out our website, sweetadvicellc.com. And that's sweet, SUITE, like a suite, like a room, sweetadvicellc.com. You can see everything she's got going on. You can also find her on LinkedIn as Rose Miller. So you can see what she has going on there. I love everything about this, Rose, but I want to kind of also talk about there's a lot of people out there that are, there's no other way to put this. HR is their enemy. They only see HR as this, oh my God, here comes HR. And I think sometimes it's cultures of companies. That's the culture the company builds. But if somebody was looking to go into HR and they're trying to work on that culture, because I think employees are always going to feel this way about HR until there's a cultural shift. What are some of the things that you would advise them to do, or maybe you've done in the past? Because we're going to get into the stories in the book here in a minute, because that in and of itself, everybody go fill your glasses up, because Rose is going to tell us stories out of her book here in a minute. And you're going to be like, that shit can't be real. But what are like some quick advice that you would say either for
Yeah.
somebody who to fix that cultural mindset of HR?
So I've read a lot of bad articles on how dysfunctional HR and they're bad news and they're good for nothing. And I go with my problems. I get no help at all. I mean, just very dysfunctional. And my first inclination when I read that is, who is HR rolling up to? Because all those companies, I would bet you 100% of them, HR rolls up to the CFO. So, and they stop HR from ever doing any good. They're they're forced to just be order takers, do the party line, not really fix anything. They really don't have the power. And I always tell people the first indication there is look at their website in the the about us section of their
Mhm.
website. If you don't see HR in that first page, that's telling me the company has a limited, you know, not
Scope.
not not a very functional HR. The companies that are rocking it, they have a people person right there on the front page.
That's sitting there with the leadership group. It's part of
Abs-
that makes sense because they're putting that as part of their culture to have something in that leadership person role. So now,
it's different lenses, and everyone's coming at the company with a different piece of the pie, a different lens. And when you have someone just focusing on the people lens, just like the finance, the money lens, the IT on the operation lens, you have yourself a great team. You take the people lens out, what do you have?
yeah,
You have what you see in most corporate environments. It's bad.
see that makes perfect sense to me. That element of if you're not presenting your people factor right there with everything else, you really aren't putting any value in them as other than their what's that saying? Uh the company would be great if I didn't have to deal with the customers. You know what I mean? We've all heard that, like, hey, sales would be great if I didn't have to deal with customers. No, that's the most important thing. So I get that. So you're running Pinnacle. You got Pinnacle going. You ended up. Correct me if I'm wrong. You sold that, right?
I did. I did. I was courted by for 3 years. I was courted by people. I was on the fastest growing business on the Albany Business Review 5 years in a row,
Wow.
and my accountant said they're going to say your name keeps on being on that list. They're going to You're going to start getting offers, and I did start getting offers, and I didn't have a succession plan, so I figured it was a good time to. And I had 30 employees, which is a lot of employees, and so many clients, and it was hard. It was hard every day. I didn't have a life.
You got as a. I tell this to people all the time. When you own your own business, you get to pick the 80 hours a week that you work. You
So
have no
true.
other choice. You know what, Rose? As we've gotten to know each other, I think you and I talked before we ever knew each other. You know that?
We
I
might
think
have.
I think I tried to get you as a client for my staffing firm when I worked for ETS. I think I tried to get you as a
I
client.
yes, I do. I remember ETS. Yes, I do.
That was me, Rose.
Yeah.
That was
Wow.
me. So I mean, and that'll tell you. And listen, folks, Ro- Rose is one of those people because that's why I was like, I know what. Like the first time I heard you, I was like, I think I know Rose more than I know Rose. And it was one of these kind of situations. She knows her business. She knew what she wanted. You were looking for like a finance person at the time. And I was
Mhm.
like, I think I got someone. It might even been Denise's husband that I was trying to introduce you to, no, knowing me at that time. So you sell off Pinnacle.
Mhm.
Now, between Pinnacle and Sweet Advice, you or maybe you correct me if I'm wrong here. When did you write the book Rose's Recipes for Business, a tasty blend of HR lessons learned? Like which comes first? The sweets or the book?
So the book.
Okay.
The book had been cooking in my brain for good 5 years. I had it all written. It was just here. I do a lot of speaking engagements and I use a lot of food analogies when I speak. It's probably the Italian, right? And so I thought of having this book where each chapter is a food chapter, but it's an HR story and an HR lesson that you can learn from it. Because we use these terms all the time, like rotten eggs and bad apples, right? And going bananas and hot spicy dishes is always some people's favorites and uh, aging produce. You all know what these subjects are.
Oh
Bun
yeah,
in the oven. You know what I'm talking about. You know what
absolutely.
these chapters going to be about. Um, so I sat down and I just wrote it all. And then when I was done, I'm kind of type A. I can't sit still. So I was reflecting on my years of Pinnacle and what I had discovered when I was reflecting on it is I had my staff. I had an amazing staff of HR pros. They were so good, and they delivered the outsourced HR model. They were sitting in these different small but medium-sized businesses every week, and they were delivering the services. I didn't have many clients myself. Had a few that wouldn't let me go, but I ran the business and they delivered the HR, even though when we had a complex situation, we called it the collective brain to solve the problem.
I like it.
Um, but they were delivering it. The owners would call me. They would call me. They trusted me. They knew me, and they would say, "I'm stuck on an issue," or "Can I throw an idea at you?" or "Should I sell? Should I buy? Should I go into this new vertical?" I would have these conversations with the clients. So I thought, well, now that I don't have Pinnacle, that could be my service because small, medium sized businesses, they don't have anyone to turn to. They don't have a board of
No.
directors. Their spouses don't want to hear about it. There's,
Well, they
they
can't
should,
answer the question, or
yeah.
they have no idea. Like, especially if you're a small business, you're like, "Honey, I'm looking to go ahead and start a second stream here of income, but I want to know, can I use my employees from both, or do I need to actually build a new SOP?" I've got meatloaf in. Like, they have no idea.
So true. So it's such a needed, and that was my sweet spot is that small, medium sized business. And they trusted me. They knew I had always been a trusted advisor. So when I put out that that was my service, I had no trouble at all. The phone was ringing because
Wow.
what small, medium sized business couldn't use that? And again, they only, leverage me when they need me. And then when a project's done, I also have a fantastic network. So that's
You know me.
why I, I call it a consortium because I worked on the first year of Sweet Advice. It was 2022, and had a friend that owned a company in Albany, and it was affiliate of a larger organization, and they had different offices across Western New York. They'd always talked about we should kind of consider merging and be stronger as one, keep our individual places but have an umbrella. But they would go back to their corners, and they kept on talking. He said, could you come and be that outside voice to bring us all together and make it happen? So I worked with them for a year, putting all the pieces together, analyzing how their strengths and their weaknesses, and what they would lose if they didn't, what would they gain if they did. I just needed, they needed me to get them to the go, no go stage. So, which I did. All the partners agreed. It made a lot of sense to merge. I brought in a business avail person, then I brought in a corporate attorney to do the operating agreement. So that's where I'm building. I pulled in my network of people to make it all happen, and they merged, and it's total success. It's was it's a was so wonderful to have it.
Well, then here's some applause for you.
So Carly's asking me where he can buy the books. So
Yes.
the book is sold on Amazon. It's also available on Audible, and it's at the bookstore in Stuyvesant Plaza and the Troy Bookshop in downtown Troy.
Is that the one? Which one of those has the local reader, the local artist? One of those two local stores has a section that's just all local people.
It's the Troy one, the
The
Troy
Troy one.
Bookstore. Yep.
Yeah, because Denise, who's been on the show, her book's over there. I think Kat's book's in there also, isn't it?
Yes,
Kat's been on
it's
the
a
show.
local authors.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Listen, Troy Bookstore. I've got 3 of them have been on my show. When are you going to call me up and ask why I've got a look, Rose, I got a book and I refuse to finish it only because I'm such that guy. Like in my head, the whole book's written and people are always like, finish it. It's an amazing story. And I'm like, I can't. I don't know how to do it. But so, and I want to get into the book now because we're getting closer and closer
Yeah. Yeah.
to closing the bar here. So in this book, though, you get into some things, and I want to talk about some of the stories. And you kind of mentioned it already. And if you know Rose and you're welcome to join us if you're ever interested in coming on our hour with Rose and I and Paul. We do it every Wednesday morning at 8:30. I had a little bit of a procedure today, Rose. That's why I wasn't there today. They had to stick cameras on both ends of me and check me out. But you can find out that Rose know, like I've heard rumors about things and I'll be like, yeah, this is what I heard. And Rose will be like, listen, young buck, let me go ahead and tell you this is really what happened. And I'm like, how do you know about that, Rose? And she's like, because I was there. She was there. She was part of it. So trust me when I mention these things. And again, check out sweetadvicellc.com. And that's sweet SUITE advice llc.com. And you can see what Rose got going on. But tell me about the book. Like Rose,
Yeah.
let's get you can tell the one story, the one story, the stairway story. We're gonna tell the stairway story last because I want people to be like, this is in the book because it's in the book, right? The stairway
It
story.
is. It is. Yeah.
We'll tell the stairway story at the end. But what are some of the different types of HR challenges that you face that like
Oh,
the more common things that from an HR standpoint that you could tell an employee like, hey, this is how you could deal with this to avoid having a problem with HR?
sure. Well, 'tis the season, and I wrote one of my columns was called "Ho Ho Oh No," because of all the things that could go wrong on your holiday party if you and then all the tips to so this doesn't ever happen again. So some of the things that I've been a witness to is we had an after party where we have a head of a division and his staff go and have an after party, an unauthorized
Oh,
after party, and one young lady ODs on drugs. Okay, they trashed the place, and the company's on the hook for trashing. And one of the things they trashed was like an irreplaceable piece of like a vase that was smashed, right? And then there's another holiday party where I just went to the bathroom for a minute, and during that time, a couple people that got drunk. One hits the other over the head with a beer bottle. There's blood and
You were there
glass
for this.
everywhere.
You were
Yes,
there
I
for
was
that.
like, the police are called, the ambulance are called, right? All I did was go to the bathroom.
Like how to come I and I'm really curious and where who was it that I don't know if it was we were on that call together. Maybe we were on the call together, but somebody mentioned like their company doesn't even they would do holiday parties in February. So that it was so past the holiday season, anybody who could make it, but it was also holiday things were out of everybody's mind. Like,
Yep.
how do you think from an HR standpoint in the modern world of 2024, almost 25, how do companies even have a holiday gathering? Like it's amazing to me.
I know. They still do. They still do. But there are ways to do it. Number one, you have all your management team, anyone in a supervisory has supervisory responsibility, you have a chat with them. You have a serious chat with them. This is a company function, and you're actually responsible to keep everything in order, to keep it a company function that doesn't go crazy, and remove anyone that has had too much. Because another story is one of the partners, they had given out those glow necklaces,
Oh
right?
yeah, yeah.
And so one of the partners has way too much because he didn't get the chat, right? And he takes off his necklace, starts whipping all the women with the with the necklace. And the next day they get like 5 different complaints going to their
Oh,
HR
no.
department showing the whip marks on their arms because he had left marks and welts on the young ladies.
Carol says don't include alcohol. That I mean, I can't argue with that. Like, hey, we're gonna do the holiday gathering at 2 o'clock. It's gonna end at 4 when the workday ends. And
And there's a way to limit, like you could have alcohol only the first hour, and then the bar shuts down,
I don't know.
so people have a break. You have people designated to look out for your company. If someone's had too much, make sure that they're in a cab, make sure that, you know, and anyone that has their management team, that they really should suffer some consequences because it put the whole company at risk. Exactly.
Yeah, Carol said exactly. Make somebody put everybody else in that position, and you have to. I had a friend of mine. They used to call him an alien. They used to call him alien abduction because when people would get a little too rowdy for situations, he would kind of come over, and then all of a sudden, the person would disappear because he and you'd be like, "Where the heck did such and such go?" Because he just would snatch them up and walk them to the door and get them out of the situation, so nobody ever knew. It was
Yep.
like, and they were like, "Where the heck did such and such go?" He was abducted by aliens, and everybody kind of understood that. Okay, he was moved on to another situation.
Yeah.
Nate, I will get to your
I mean,
question.
it's why Regeneron bus brings them and brings them home. It puts them in all in they transport them to the party and transport them home.
Yeah,
So
when I worked for ETS, they would do a yearly holiday thing, and it was, hey, we're going to a location in a hotel. We're paying for the hotel. You just have to get up there. There was no reason to be anywhere else to avoid the DUIs and the other issues and the other problems. And I definitely agree with those things. Um, we're- I want to. Do you have any before the hallway? God, because I love that story. There's nothing like that story. Do you have any other stories before we get to the hallway story that you would
oh
like to share? Eh,
so there's so many. Um, Probably my one of my favorites is an investigation that I had to do where the claim was for the past 15 years, her boss would ask her to come in the office every morning and he would rub her boobs. And so, and she didn't want him to do that anymore. So
For
when
15 years, it was okay though.
well, that was one of the first questions. Were like, how you say this has been happening for 15 years, and had you filed a complaint at any time in these 15 years? And she said, no, I have not. And I'm like, did you not? Why? Was there? Did you not know where to go or who to ask? And she said, no, just recently it started to hurt. That's what she said. So, so So next, so next is him, right? So you have to write everything down, and I'm a pro. I'm not even laughing, right? So next is
How do you
him.
not laugh? I'm sorry, Rose. How do you not laugh at
Takes
some
years
point?
of practice. Takes years
Oh
of
my
practice.
God.
So I'm in front of him, and I said, "There's been a claim of inappropriate behavior, and from your secretary, what do you think she's talking about?" He said, I can't believe that she's complained, all this time that I'm rubbing her boobs and she knows it's good for my carpal tunnel syndrome. I, I, I said, so you're admitting that you, he said, yes, see, it's
It's
on a tape,
therapeutic.
it's therapeutic. So I'm going down the elevator,
Yeah,
and I'm like, usually game over once they admit it.
right.
That's all. Like, it's it. But I'm thinking that they're
Oh,
they're both saying these things like
right.
so matter of factly. I'm like, are they just? Am I they playing me? I'm thinking to myself,
Oh,
it can't be true.
it can't be real.
So
It
I'll
can't be real.
ask someone. I interviewed two others in the office, and
Okay.
they totally supported. Like the two of them, he's rubbing her boobs every morning. She's giggling. She actually gave him a plaque that had N period, T period, B period on the plaque. And I said, well, what's that stand for? He said, nice tits Betty. And she gave it to him.
So, like,
Yeah.
how do you, other than going, you don't touch her tits and go see a therapist for carpal tunnel? Like, how do you even address that other than firing them both after? Like, you either fire them both or you just like don't do it.
Yep. That was the recommendation. They
Wow.
both have to go.
Wow. That's unbelievable.
But he was the boss. She was obviously a willing participant. He rewarded him with a plaque, but on the other hand, he's the boss, and
Right. He
and
has to be held to that level of
exactly.
understanding. So, all right. All right. Nate, I'm going to ask your question real quick, and then I'm going to let Rose tell the stairway story because there's nothing like this I've ever heard. And Carol, I hope you're still listening because you're going to love this after all your HR years. Nate wants to know, uh, do you, and we'll go with just at holiday parties because we had this conversation the other day. Rose gets invited to about 3 a day during this time of the year, and she can't make them all. Do you have a favorite holiday dish that you look for when you go to things like this dish tells Rose this is a good quality holiday gathering?
Oh, that's a hard one. I think if uh, if there's anything um, that I like that really like turns it's like this was the bomb party. It's those little lamb lollipop. Those
Oh yeah.
crusted little lamb lollipops. If those servers they're serving those, you've got my attention.
They've spent some money at that one. That one's all right. So Rose is going to tell, and look, folks, if you want to know more about what Rose has going on, check out sweetadvicellc.com, and that's sweet SUITE advice. Share the daylights out of this so that everyone can hear this story. Rose is going to tell a story that when I heard it, I was just gobsmacked. That's the only word that's coming to mind. So please, Rose, tell the story. Set it up any way you want to.
Yeah. So this was an office that resided in my same building. Okay. So, and they were a client. I was delivering HR to them, and this is when I was actually part of doing their HR for them. They were a client of mine. So they were telling me that um, they have this couple that they know is doing it in the stairwell, and people want to use the stairs, and they can't use the stairs because almost on a daily basis this couple's doing it in the stairwell. So I said, well, if you think you can, if there's a time in the day and you think they're there, give me a call and I'll go to your office and investigate. So sure enough, I get the call. We believe they're in the stairwell. You got to come. You got to come. It's come now, right? So I was able to go there, and I'm above the floor, and I'm going down the stairwell. And what I see on the platform it will be frozen in my brain forever, because what I see is what appears to be like a 300-pound woman push this little guy up against the cinder blocks, and all you can see is his hands and his feet. It looked like a cartoon.
He was struggling for life, folks. just, so Rose, and you got to ask the question. So, when did you announce yourself? Like, hey, I'm watching here. I'm trying to take the like. What happens after that? Oh
So
my god!
yeah, you do what every HR person has to do. You have to break it up and tell them what are you supposed to be doing. What is your job, and why aren't you doing your job? And get to work, because that's the only reason why you're here is to do your work.
Oh, that's so great, Rose. Uh, Folks, again, Rose has stories upon stories. Take the time, check out. If you want to know what she's got going on, you want to know about Rose, or you want to talk to her, maybe you've got some C-suite situations, small business, sweetadvicellc.com. That's sweet SUITE advice llc.com. You can see what she's got going on. Take the time and go pick up Rose's book, Rose's Recipes for Business, a tasty blend of HR lessons learned. Again, that's on Amazon. There's an Audible version. Who does who reads the Audible version, Rose? Do you read
It
it?
it was no, it was an actor, a voice actor read
Okay.
the book. Yeah.
All right. So I'm a big Audible guy, so I will probably pick up the audio version because I read all my books by that way. So pick up the book, read that. Um, God, it's hilarious. As I always say, if you're finding me through Rose or Rose through me, please take the time, like, share, follow all the different platforms. It may sound cliche, it may sound like your kids or grandkids watching a video and you're thinking, "Oh, why do they do?" Well, that's how these algorithms work. That's how things grow. That's how we all get found out. So make sure you're doing all those things for us. Now, we're not doing a show next week, folks. It's going to be Christmas Day on Wednesday. Now, that doesn't mean that, the eggnog isn't flowing and we don't turn the live on at some point. That's been known to happen on days like that. So we may turn that on. We're debating January 1st, but I think I'll have a guest on January 1st. If I do, we're going to be talking about SEO, working with Google, how your Google ads work, some of the real truths that are out there, and debunking some of the things that are out there where companies will try to say to you, "Oh, we can get you at the head of the organic, like we just do this." Guess what, folks? It's a load of bullshit. There's no way to control organic on Google. That Google controls that. It's has to do with your location and all kinds of stuff. So I think we're going to be ending up doing that. And if we do that, that's going to be on January 1st. That'll be with Darcy Knapp. She is the president of SEO Mechanical. You might even, do you know Darcy?
I do.
I knew you would. I had no doubt. Listen to me, folks. If there's one person in Albany that I know that if I needed to know somebody, I'm going to pick up the phone and I'm going to call. Well, there's two. I'm going to call Rose and then I'm going to call Stan. I could probably call Stan. You know that? Stan probably knew their parents though.
Darcy's great.
And
She knows her stuff.
She took care of my stuff. So make sure you're doing those things. Make sure you're checking all that out and seeing what we've got going on. Now, Rose, I know we talked about this before. You told me you had binged all 263 episodes. You're fully immersed in the Above the Bar podcast culture. So I know you know what's coming up, but just in case you may have forgotten, do not log off on me right after this. We just got to talk for a couple minutes after the show.
Okay.
The guest always gets the final word. So what is your final word tonight, Rose?
So be merry, fill your life with laughter, and try to stay out of trouble.
All righty, folks. Be sure to push your stool in. This has been a Second Front podcast presentation found on Apple, Spotify, and wherever podcasts can be found.